Hello, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to Digital Scotland's .live webinar series, and thank you for checking in. The mission of Digital Scotland to build a community of entrepreneurs, experts, to support the Scottish Government's ambition to build a world-leading digital nation. And these webinars are intended to showcase ideas, innovations, and share best practices towards that goal. So thanks to our 21 speakers within our 2 weeks of digital conferences. And again, welcome this morning to that very special digital summit. Please notice that each presentation will be recorded and added to our replay archive at digitalscot.live. And of course, you can access a regular flow of news, blogs at our digitalscot.net portal. We are actually live. My name is Will, and let's start the first conference of the two planned today. Please welcome Derek Granger, Regional Development Manager at GovGrant, how to gain the maximum commercial value from R&D, IP, and patents by utilizing the government's innovation incentives. We'll talk about this right now. Take some notes, drop some questions in the box because we are live. I'll come back after Derek's speak for a Q&A session. Derek, welcome, and comments are yours now.
Well, how are you doing? Really good to be here today. Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure. I've really enjoyed the presentation so far from some of the other speakers. Well, all of the other speakers, I've got to say, I don't want to single anyone out, but there's been some great ones so far. My name's Derek Granger. Our company is GovGrant, and we are innovation incentive specialists. Our mission is to make the UK the destination of choice for innovation globally. And my remit within the business is really focused in the Scottish side of things. I am extremely passionate about helping Scottish businesses to get that commercial advantage. And it's a pleasure to be able to share some of the things that we can potentially help businesses with, and maybe some guideposts. So I'm hoping that you can see my screen, although I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, I've just had the nod. So the things that we're going to cover today, it is a kind of 25-minute brief overview. So we'll rush through some of it. If anybody's got any questions, we can take them at the end. And if anybody wants to catch up offline, I'm more than happy to help with that. So we're going to touch on R&D tax relief, which, I almost kind of take the thought and think that everybody already knows about R&D tax relief and everybody's claiming it. But actually, our experience would tell us that there's still lots of businesses that either aren't claiming this valuable relief, or are maybe only getting a small percentage of what they can get. So we'll look at that. We'll then look at the next stage, as we see it, of the innovation journey, which is the commercialization of the IP that's created, and then following on from that, how we can then help clients to get patents and get into patent box, and then realize that commercial advantage when they're at the point where they're actually making profits on their products or services, whatever it is. And as I say, we'll come back to the Q&A at the end of it. So R&D tax relief, as I say, it's we all, because we live and breathe it every day, we think everybody knows about it. It has been around for a fairly long while now. The R&D tax relief scheme was started in the UK in 2000 for SME businesses, and then it was further developed for what is now the RDR scheme for large businesses. I'm going to make the assumption that most of the people that we're speaking to are SME businesses. That potentially we're looking at some startups and some companies that are in those kind of earlier stages of their businesses. So I'm kind of focused more on that today. The whole purpose of the RDR tax relief scheme, it's there to incentivise businesses as part of the UK's economic strategy, to help businesses to basically to invest in them and to incentivise them to further innovate, which will help to grow our economy and help them as businesses as well. It's administered by HMRC, and that's quite an important thing, I would say. And I'll touch on it a little bit later, but there's a bit of a common misconception, I think, and particularly in Scotland, that because it's administered by HMRC, that it's something that you go to your accountant about. And it's not to say accountants can't help you with this, they absolutely can. My background before working with companies direct. I spent 12 years working with accountants, firstly on tax investigations, and then for the last 7 or 8 years, I was involved in setting up an R&D service for accountants. But accountants are good at the tax side of it, which is why people think, oh yeah, because it's a tax-based relief. But actually, the qualifying expenditure is based on the innovation, and if you don't have a real deep-rooted understanding of the qualifying activities, the baseline technologies, where the innovation is, you're never going to find all of the qualifying expenditure, which is why at GovGrant we have both the tax-based people who can do the calculations and make sure that we get everything right for each MRC, but actually the core of the business is done by our technical team, who are there to maximise the amount back. And I'll go into why that's important in a little bit more time. The SME scheme is very generous. You can claim up to 33% of qualifying expenditure. Now that 33% is loss-making business. If you're a profit-making business, then it's 25%. But you can take that as a cash payment, which can then be reinvested into your business to help to fuel that next round of innovation or continue on the existing project that you have. So it is a really, really generous relief that businesses are entitled to, and it's one that we hope more and more businesses, as the result of getting this message out with the guys here today, through the work that we're trying to do with other kind of bodies in Scotland, that we can make sure that anybody that's entitled to this can get it. It's not free money. It's money that you are entitled to for the innovation that you're carrying out. So it's something that we really want to help businesses on. Is it worth claiming R&D tax relief? I mean, absolutely. Since the scheme began, there's been over 300,000 claims, over £30 billion in tax relief has been claimed. The reason I say is it worth claiming R&D tax relief, again, just kind of with a view to what I can think the audience is. A lot of startup businesses, a lot of digital businesses that we speak to, they are so focused on the next round of funding or the grant application that they're looking to put in, that they kind of forget about the R&D tax relief. Now, there are things that we need to take into consideration. If you do have a grant for a particular project, it will reduce what you can claim in certain circumstances. It can mean that you can't claim. But just because you've got a grant or just because you're thinking about funding doesn't mean you shouldn't be thinking about the R&D tax credits. And actually, when you are looking for funding, it is a question as you get further along that journey, the investors will start to ask, have you claimed R&D tax relief? Have you looked to see if there's any intellectual property within the business? In Scotland, the average claim for an SME is £55,249 per annum. For a business that hasn't claimed this, if you look at it before the end of before your year end, you have the ability to go back 2 years, so you could actually get twice as much. Now, I'm not going to suggest that if it's a startup business that it's going to be as much as that. It might be considerably lower, but actually, certainly businesses within the digital space, there tends to be a lot more qualifying activities going on. There's a lot more R&D heavy, so it can be much higher than that as well. I've startup businesses that are claiming, that are getting hundreds of £1,000s back, and I have well-established businesses that are getting far less than the average. But regardless of what you can get back, it's still going to be valuable to you. And a little bit of a plug to us, and I really don't want to make this too much of a salesy kind of GovGrant type thing. But on average, we can double what clients are getting back. And quite a lot of the work that we've done in the last year, or certainly a lot of the work that I've been doing over the last year, because of my background of working with accountants, a lot of my work comes from accountants. And what we've been doing is helping them to enhance what their clients are already getting. So they'll come to us and say, actually, I know you told us, Derek, that you thought you could help. This client really needs some help now. Can you have a look at it? And generally speaking, we found that we've been doubling at least what clients have got back. With some real success stories in the last year. Certainly the biggest uplift was in a company that were already getting 7 figures, and they got 8 times more than what they'd previously got. So that's an extreme, but it's definitely worth looking at. And that comes down to the fact that we are real experts. We're also success aligned. So we only get paid a percentage of what the client gets back. So for us, we leave no stone unturned. We make sure that we get every single penny that the client's entitled to. And that comes through years and years of experience of doing these. We've done over 10,000 claims over the time that we've been in business. So just looking at some of the further stats on the R&D side of things, last year just under 60,000 claims were made. The vast majority of claims are within manufacturing, professional, scientific, technical information communication. The biggest area for claims in total is information and communication, as HMRC would see it. So that includes all kind of software, kind of digital type businesses. So is the biggest area for claims, the biggest single sector. I suppose disappointingly for me, when I look at the stats and I see that the vast majority of claims are made in London and the southeast, I want to make sure that more Scottish businesses are getting their fair share. You could argue probably some of that is to do with where the registered address is. But without being able to strip out that information, there still is a large proportion of R&D claims that are being made in London and the southeast. And certainly my own belief is that we are no less innovative. In fact, I'm going to say it. I think we're more innovative than any other area. We're no less innovative than any other area in the UK. We have a strong tradition here in Scotland of being innovators, and we just need to make sure that we're getting the message out there to people so that they know that that this is available to them, they can actually get the benefit of it. And that's the job of people like myself, and the likes of Digital Scotland, helping us, giving us a platform to get that message out to businesses. Everybody wins from this. This is not just we looking at, obviously we're a commercial organisation, we will make money out of this. But for us, that's the byproduct. It's really about helping businesses. If we can help Scottish businesses and we can get more businesses getting what they're entitled to, we'll see more innovation, we'll see the economy growing, and we need to all work together. I've always believed that, but certainly in the current climate that we're in now, I believe it tenfold. So that's the kind of R&D side of things. A little bit about the stuff that qualifies. I'm not going to read every single bit, but with a project, you need to be seeking for an advancement in either science or technology. There has to be some technical uncertainty at the start of it. The vast majority of costs in most circumstances for R&D are going to be the staff costs. So it's salaries, bonuses, your national insurance contributions, pension contributions. You can also claim for subcontractor costs, although it's at a lower rate. And then it's about working out what percentage of someone's time is actually being spent on that. That's where our technical team will come in and with their knowledge and with their experience, they can make sure that you get the right amount, that you're not trying to claim too much, but you're also not claiming less than you're entitled to. There are other costs for things like heating and lighting as well that you can claim on it. And there's, to be honest, there's a load of other things, but I could have a list as long as my arm if we went through that. But that's the kind of main things. One of the things that we do see at times where we have startup businesses where they're not taking any money out of the company, is you might have a director of the business that's spending 100 hours a week, but if he's not paying himself anything, unfortunately, although there's lots of qualifying time, there's no qualifying expenditure because it has to show on the P&L. But there may be subcontractor costs, and certainly even if someone is in that situation, please don't think we're still happy to help, have a conversation with you and give you some advice on the things that will qualify as you get further down that line. A lot of the work that I do is with startup businesses and just giving them some advice. And it's something that I feel we've got a responsibility to do that. So that's the R&D tax relief side of things, and that's the bit. To be honest, this is where quite often the conversation stops. People make an R&D tax relief claim, and then the next year they make another R&D tax relief claim, and this just continues on, and they don't look at anything further than that. And for us, it really is it's the starting point. This is a jumping off point. Are you making an R&D tax relief claim? And if you are, should we be looking at harvesting your IP? So some questions here that we would say, can I ask yourself, have you made an R&D claim but never considered patents? If it's not been on the agenda, if it's not something that either your internal team or your accountant or another provider, if they're not speaking to you about the potential for patents, get it on the agenda and make sure they're speaking about it. To raise funds, because it's something that you're going to be asked when you're going through your funding rounds. Do you have IP within the business? How you expand overseas? And this can really help with that. Are you looking to exit the business? We've seen some stats that I was told just last week that a company that has a patent will generally sell for at least 10% more than a company without a patent. So if you're thinking about selling a business, it's definitely a good idea to have either a patent or at least a patent application in progress, because it will certainly help with the value of the business. Are you paying corporation tax? I mean, nobody likes paying tax. Well, nobody loves it. It's a necessary evil. But if you're paying corporation tax, let's look and see if there is something that is a legitimate way of reducing that corporation tax. It's not looking at any kind of tax avoidance or anything like that. This is a government scheme that is there to make sure that you get the benefit that you're entitled to. And are you put off by legal costs? This comes up quite a lot in conversations with me as people say, well, actually the cost of doing this, it's prohibitive. So we've just decided against it. We're going to leave it just now. If the answer is yes to any of these questions, then I would say that you should be thinking about harvesting your IP, because it could be hugely beneficial to your business. If the answer is yes to more than one of these, then it's an absolute no-brainer. You should be at least having the conversation with someone like ourselves to see if you can do that. So IP Harvest itself, this is a unique service that we've introduced through GovGrant. And what it is it essentially it's to give you the answer to the question, do I have something patentable within my business? And it will be a yes or no answer to that. We're not lawyers, we're not theorists, we're business people. We're coming at it with a commercial lens. Our objective is to get clients into Patent Box, because that's where we get paid. Because as I said previously, we're success aligned. We do a huge amount of work at the outset, where there's a one-off payment at the start for our IP harvest. But other than that, there's a lot of work involved. But for us, it's we've got a clear focus on that. We don't want to take people down a path if they're not going to get the outcome. If someone comes to me and says, I think I've got something patentable, and I quite clearly don't think that we're not going to set them off in this route, because we want to manage their expectations. We want to help people. We're not in this just to do a load of IP harvest. That's not our business model. Our business model is to actually help people to get the benefit of the Patent Box scheme. So it is a fixed fee, so you know exactly what you're paying up front. You'll get a yes or no decision at the end of it, and a clear understanding of any IP opportunities. Even if the answer is no, it will give you some really valuable kind of insight into your assets within the business. And if the answer is yes, then you have the opportunity to go for a patent and get that reduction in corporation tax through the Patent Box scheme, which is obviously that's the for us, that's the real end goal. Our clients might have some other objectives within that. They may be thinking, well, actually we are interested in the protection side of things. We're not saying don't protect your IP, but what we're saying is let's protect your IP, but let's do it in a very commercially focused way. So that's what we're looking at. So the commercial benefits of a patent itself. If you have a commercially valuable idea, it can be easy to copy. If you don't have a patent on it, then if it's a good idea, someone else will like that idea and will think, I'm going to try and see if I can make a go of that, and it will bring competitors. Depending on the muscle that they have. I've got a client just now that I'm speaking to who are a startup business. They have got something there that we're pretty sure is patentable. and they need to get their flag in the ground with their patent application as soon as possible, because there is another company who are established name, have something similar to what they do, but it's nowhere near as advanced. And if they launch this, then without a patent, they very quickly find probably that this other competitor with their market share and with their recognised brand, very quickly swoop in and they'll own that space. So this will help them to protect, and for any business to protect that market share. It's a patent is it's a certificate from the government saying congratulations on coming up with something that's really innovative and really cool. Here's a certificate that says for the next 20 years you've got the monopoly on this market. But at the end of that, you need to tell the world how you did it, so that we can then advance on from your technology and people can build on it. That's what it's there to do. You can also, through a patent, you can sell the rights if you're not interested in kind of branching out overseas, but other, you want to license it to other businesses, then you can do that. And as I touched on before, it does make you more attractive to investors. It's something that's coming up in conversations far more. We're actually getting a lot of people coming to us, and it's been because the potential investors are asking the questions of them. So actually, I would say it's much better that when you're going to see investors and you're looking for that next round of funding, if you've already done this, you are a far more attractive option for the investors, and it shows that you really understand your business and you really understand the market that you're working in. And as I mentioned, for us, the other great thing about a patent is it does get you into patent box, and who wouldn't want to have a reduced rate of corporation tax? Effectively, I mean, it's an effective rate of 10%. So it's 10% on all profits worldwide that are related to the patent. And there are some complexities about how we go about that, but that's for us to worry about. Ultimately, if it's something that's integral to the product, the system that you have, then it will attract a 10% corporation tax rate on all of the profit lines related to that. So I just wanted to touch on the patent process. I think people tend to think it's a bit more complicated than it is to get a patent, and quite often, people will think that from the leap from R&D and stuff that qualifies for R&D tax relief to stuff that qualifies for a patent, or it is as a leap, and I'd say it's probably more of a big step, but it's not as huge as what people think. What you're doing has to be novel. It can't be obvious to someone else that come along. You can't think I've done something and someone else that is competent comes along and says, well, of course that's like. You wouldn't do it any other way, and it has to be useful. It has to have some what we call industrial application, but it has to be useful. It has to be something that actually people are going to think, oh yeah, well that's handy. There's no point if you develop something and it is, no one would ever buy it or find any use for it whatsoever. A patent itself can only be granted for a product or process that's not in the public domain. This is an important point. And something that we've seen just recently, where companies have done like crowdfunding, and as part of that, they put on a lot of information about what their technology is. If you put the technology online and it's on a crowdfunding page, that then becomes prior art, which means that you won't get a patent for that. So be careful if you are doing anything like this, that you don't give away the secret sauce. You don't give them the what the real key ingredient is that makes your platform, system, service, whatever it is that you're doing, unique. And then the other thing is that it needs, as I say, it needs to remain secret until the point that the patent has been filed. So when I'm speaking to businesses and they're telling me what it is that they've got, I'm kind of, sometimes people can be a bit slow to take action. I'm kind of saying to them, you need to get moving on this, because if you've come up with a good idea, the likelihood is that someone else has probably come up with a good idea as well. So it's definitely something you need to get your marker in the ground. The normal patent application process, it takes about 36 months from start to finish. If you've gone to the IPO's office, they'll say up to 5 years, but generally it's about 3 years. We've come up with a way that actually reduces a lot of that time. It reduces a lot of the costs, and that's our kind of unique approach. For companies that we already work with, we know where the IP is within their R&D treasure chest. For companies that come to us, we're not working with them on that. We get our IP analysts to do a deep dive into the business to understand where the IP is. Unlike patent attorneys, and I don't want to make a sweeping statement, although I'll put it there in writing about patent attorneys, we file fast, and we make sure that the scope of the patent is actually what's going to get approved, rather than trying to cover the whole field and finding that what happens is you've lots of offer actions at the IPO office, and you come down to where we would start anyway. There's a lot more cost involved if you do it that way, and a lot more time. What we look to do is we look to file fast-tracked, low-cost patents that are looking at the key ingredients within the business, that blade of grass, the stuff that's going to get you a patent quickly and get you into a patent box. And if you do that, then for the client, it just makes the whole process a heck of a lot easier. Patent box itself, and I'm conscious of time. When you do these, when you're speaking to yourself, kind of practicing them, you all seem to do them on time, and then you go to actually do them, and before you know it, you've rambled on about stuff and went into things in more detail than you intended to. Patent box itself, it is a relatively new tax incentive scheme. It was only introduced in 2013. There's not as much knowledge about it. It can be far more complex than the R&D scheme, which is probably why accountants and stuff won't get near this really. There's a few that kind of touch on it, but it isn't as well known. There aren't as many companies claiming into the patent box scheme. If you look at the number of companies last year, even versus the amount of patents that were granted in the UK last year, there's a huge difference. I think there was about 12 to 15,000 patents granted in the UK last year, and it's kind of round about that each year. Yet there's only 1,230 companies that are in it. Most of the benefit tends to be larger companies, and you might think, oh well, in that case it's just not relevant for us. We know through the work that we're doing that there is so much innovation going on within SME businesses that is just left untapped, and if we can try and help companies to access that, it's going to make a huge difference for them. As I say, it applies to worldwide profits, the full duration of the patent. So you've got a 20-year run at this, and it reduces your profits to 10%. To get in, you need to be a UK limited company. You need to be paying corporation tax to get the benefit from it. You need to have a UK granted patent. There are some other jurisdictions, European patents, and some other kind of random countries that will recognise for it. But certainly the easiest way is get a UK granted patent. Or if you haven't created the patent yourself, but you're responsible for the commercial management and the exploitation of it, that's another way of doing it. So I'm kind of rushing through these last couple of slides here, but we're nearly there. I'm conscious of time. This is just our process, and this is how we see it. R&D at the top, you do your R&D innovation. That then will follow through into an IP harvest. The IP harvest will either say yes or no. If it's a no, then at least you know not to spend loads more cash on this, trying to get a patent on something that you're not going to get. If the answer is yes, then we can help you to draft and get ready for a patent application. If there's we're kind of unsure, we have another that we can do, which is an IP strength test, where we can do a real deep dive into the business. We can look at your competitors, look at what it is that you're trying to achieve, and try and see if we can see a path for you. And to give an example, we had a company recently who we did an IP harvest for, and when we looked at it, we said, do you know what? There's a lot of kind of potential kind of landmines in front of you, where there's other companies that are further ahead you and their development. So we said that at this point we would say no, but let's look at this, look at the strength test. We did a strength test for them, and basically what it is, if you just move over this way a little bit and go in this direction, you've got a clear path. That company now have changed tact. They've got an application in for a patent, which we're confident is going to be granted. And that's going to make a huge difference for them, because they now have a road to travel that is pretty clear, and it will hopefully be a huge commercial success for them. So that's just to give you an example of those ones where they kind of don't, it's not the yes or no, although generally it is yes or no. So the key takeaways, what I would say is R&D tax relief. This is well known, but it's only half the picture. And even though R&D tax relief is a well-known relief, it's still massively underclaimed. The UK Patent Box scheme is new, it's growing, but it really is poorly understood. We are experts in this area, and we can really help. It will get you a reduction in your corporation tax. And for us, we've developed this process that can take you through that far quicker and a cost-effective way to make sure that you get that commercial advantage. And it is my belief that if we can help companies with this, it's going to make a huge difference to them going forward, as we come out of the current situation that we're in. So that is pretty much it from me. Apologies that I did run a little bit over time, guys, but I hope you'll forgive me.
That's okay, Derek. That was perfect. Thank you for this crystal clear, nice cover of the topic. This is, actually the Q&A session. Feel free to use the box, dear audience. I do have a question for you, Derek, to point about wanting more Scottish firms to claim R&D. Do you have a sense of how many could be claiming but are not?
Do you know, it's I remember a couple of years ago that in my previous role there was someone had tried to do some stats, and I'll be honest, the range was so wide as to what it could be. I'd rather not say it to anybody, because it just, to me, it's just a bit woolly. But I certainly think that we could be easily doubling the amount of R&D claims that have been made in Scotland, and that's been kind of. That's not been optimistic. I don't want to say pessimistic. I don't like using the word pessimistic, but that's me being quite conservative. In my estimation, there are a huge amount of innovative businesses. I speak to as many businesses and work with as many businesses that have never claimed this as I do companies that have claimed it. So that's maybe a little bit of a guide on it. But during the current situation that we're in, you guys will have seen it as well. But there's so many people that have used this time to get that idea that they had, that thing that they've always wanted to try, kind of started up. So I really do think that while we're in a not so good situation just now, there is so much innovation going on in Scotland, and over the next few years, I'm really looking forward to helping those businesses as they start to grow a little bit, to make sure that they get the qualifying expenditure that they're entitled to. So I know I've kind of it's almost answer to it, but I mean there's a significant amount that could be claiming, that won't be claiming, or that aren't claiming at the moment.
All right. And what if an SME doesn't have R&D capacity in-house? How should they approach this? As an example, could they work with universities? Are there universities in Scotland who specialize in this?
Yes, I mean certainly there will be a lot. There is a lot of collaboration between the private sector and the universities, in particular in Scotland. But in terms of if they don't have capacity, what we tend to find is that a lot of the work, if you have a company that don't, they're starting off themselves, they will use subcontractors, and there's some, certainly within the digital space, there's some really good companies that will help when it comes to providing those services. What it does mean is that you claim 100% of the time that those people have worked on. There's a maximum of 65% of their time that can be claimed. And then within the 65%, it might be 80% of the 65%. You know, for software development, it can be 100% of the 65%. But yeah, I would say that, you know, there's a lot of work goes on where it will be, you know, subcontracted work that people are carrying out. You know, that tends to be the kind of more the route that I see.
You explained, Derek, very clearly the process, but can you give an example of a specific Scottish tech startup and how they went through this process and what it achieved for the business?
Sorry, what did you say? A specific Scottish?
A specific Scottish tech startup. Do you have an example?
Yeah, without giving any names, because obviously you know, without asking clients beforehand. But yeah, I mean, they tend to be they're quite similar. I would say in terms of but I've got an example of a firm that I started working with last year. They're a small company just now. They're a fintech company, and they're certainly seen as a company that have capacity to grow quite quickly. Unfortunately, they were a bit of victims of the COVID outbreak, and you know, due to go for some funding rounds, which things get held back, etc. But we get involved, and I'm maybe a bit guilty at times of getting involved with businesses a bit too early. But there's not a huge amount in it for us. But for that company, they've 3 directors within the company, but none of them were taking any salaries out of the business. So the bulk of their time was we weren't able to make a claim, but they had used an external company to develop their platform, and have developed it to a point. But they'd spent about, I think it was £60,000-80,000 on the development of this platform. And we said to them, do you know what? Let's just go and look at that just now. And we got them some money back. There was some other qualifying expenditure within it. It wasn't a huge claim by any stretch of the imagination. You know, so on that, you're talking what, probably about, I think, £20,000 qualifying. They got back as the tax relief claim by the time we'd added in some other stuff. So it's not huge for the client. It's not huge for us. We do that as a kind of a list that you don't need to put in just as much detail. But for us, what it was with them is that we can see that company has the ability to grow. Since then, they've went on to get another round of funding. And are probably going to spend about £500,000 over the next year or so on the development of their platform. So on that, you know, if someone's got a good idea, but they've not incurred a lot of costs, even at this point, you know, I would say I'm always happy to speak to them. Where we would maybe take a slightly different view is if there's a company that's been established for 20 years, and you know, they've got £5,000-10,000 worth of qualifying expenditure. You know, it's not really going to go anywhere. We don't make any money out of it. It's not. Is it worth the client's time? We'd maybe have a different conversation. But for startup businesses, you know, if you can see that there's potential there, then, you know, why would you not want to get involved? I feel as if it's your responsibility to get involved. You know, you should be helping if you can. Like, if you can help someone, why not help someone? So I don't know. I don't know if that's a kind of good explanation without being able to get into too much detail on it.
Yeah, sure. Right. We do have a last question for you, Derek. It's coming from Gordon. Thank you for your question, Gordon. Is R&D tax credit relevant to startup? Only grant investment income and not yet in revenue?
So you don't need to be making revenue. You can be pre-revenue and still look at an R&D claim as long as you've got costs within the business. Where you have grants, and I mentioned that, you know, in a little bit of detail when I was going through the talk, it does have an impact, or it can have an impact on an R&D claim. I would say that if you have a grant, grants are always going to be the best option because you're actually getting the money there. So I would say, you know, you go for I say go for a grant first. If you get a grant, the difficulty with grants is that there's so much competition for them. the grant applications can be really time consuming. But if you do have a grant, if it's seen as state aid, then that will have an impact on the project. But it's always worth having a look, because sometimes the grant might not be for that specific project. It might be for the kind of genuine of the business, in which case it's not relevant. So on that type of thing, Gordon, I would say it's definitely worth looking at. We can very quickly give you a good steer on that, but we would need to see the grant application and stuff that you've got.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you for your time. This was really nice having you with us today, Derek, and see you very soon.
No, it was an absolute pleasure for me. I think you guys are doing a great thing here. Really happy to be a part of it. I hope that the listeners got a little bit of value from it. And anything I can do to help going forward, more than happy to. I'll just quickly flick up just in case anybody needs my details. They're there, and for the recording when they see it, it'll be there for forevermore. So feel free to give me a call, send me an email. Always happy to help. Neil, well, thank you. Take care. All the best, everyone.
Thanks for this, Derek. It's noted. So this webinar is now reaching its end. It will be available within the next minutes in our replay archive at digitalscot.live. And remember that you can always access to news, blogs at our digitalscot.net portal. Next up, second talk of the day this afternoon. Be there at 3 p.m. to talk about building a more inclusive society by unleashing technology's potential with founder and CEO of Neatbox, Gavin Neat. So if not done yet, check out our next talks and subscribe for them at digitalscot.live. Thank you for watching us. Enjoy your day and hopefully see you this afternoon. Goodbye.